Greetings. I am here with one of my dearest friends of decades past, Sands Hall. The day I met Sands Hall in Iowa at the Iowa Summer Writing Festival, where I thought that I was going to become a writer because I wrote. I've been writing all my life. And so somewhere in the scheme of things in a catalog, I saw the visage of Sands Hall offering a class in creative writing. So I sent her a short story, I thought it was a short story, called The Cork Torque, Tickety Torque Blues Revisited, from an event that I experienced in the 50s. I walked into a classroom, and that is where I learned there's a difference between writing, which anyone can do, and becoming a writer.
Or being a writer, yes. That's exactly right.
So I've asked Sands to come and to have a conversation on video with me, and we don't really know where it will go totally, but if you look here, Sands has come out with one of her latest books, Flunk Start. A phrase is used when people are training to be good Scientologists. And my story, my memoir, Repairing the Benzo Blunder. And we discovered in a conversation the idea that we have both survived a very insidious kind of experience that took each of us 10 years of our lives. So I spent 10 years wading in and out of the use of Ativan, which kills people we know now, but didn't then. And here Sands has written a 10-year experience of evolving through almost crawling out of the tunnel of being entrapped in something that started out to be enlightening. In your case, it would be philosophically enlightening. Mine was that little Ativan pill allowed me to sleep next to my husband, who was declining with dementia and finally died. And then all of a sudden, it took me all those years to get off of it, all those years for you to get out of it, and here we sit.
And here we sit, right. No, there are these wonderful similarities, and it was great yesterday to really realize that sometimes I've referred to this time as my awfully big mistake, and it was struck to me because it was a decade that I was in the Church of Scientology, and it actually was 7 years, but it took me 3 before I was sure I wouldn't return. And the wonderful sense of, oh my God, her book is actually called Blunder. Mine has this idea, as she's explained, the idea of you fail, but you get back up again. And I think we both ultimately come in our respective memoirs and explanations of this decade in our lives to a place of really important aspects to do with recovery. How do you reclaim, in my case, a decade lost? How can you actually take hold of those regrets and sorrows that you spent that year and those 10 years in that particular way and feel that you actually have a life that you can be pleased with? And that is the essential thing I think both of us came to in our books.
Absolutely.
Ultimately.
It's the universal order of growth. So I would not be doing what I'm doing today had I not been entrapped in benzomania, I call it, or in benzo land. So it became its own cult of physicians that really did not understand that these particular kind of mind-masking drugs were only to be used as a stopgap between grief or loss that will help somebody rebalance and reclaim who they really are and get through the tragedies that come of just living these years.
It's so true.
The fact that you and I, we met in 1993, and our story really should be told in its own other medium, but right now I think that because we have the opportunity to do this little video, that it would be nice for us to do a little bit of reading from each of our books at the point where we knew that it wasn't just the lost decade.
That's right.
Okay, so why don't you go first?
And I'll also just say that my book's going to come back out as a paperback, and this will be its new title, which I think is wonderful. They've decided to take off the flunk start for the paperback, and so if you are interested, look for it in this format as well. So this is towards the very end of the book, and it's just a couple of paragraphs that I think sum up my own. For years I thought of my time in Scientology. The shame attached to the woods underworld where I spent so much time is unique. I talk a lot about the hero's journey and that descent into the underworld. I was not able to see it as simply a version of a journey taken by most of us at some point in life. But as I began to write and finally to speak openly about that squandered decade, I heard from many who'd taken or been led into detours from their own expected lives. Often these were shy, whispered conversations as they confided their own shame, what they perceived as their own flunks, the decade in the terrible marriage, the years lost to OxyContin, the time in an ashram agreeing to and participating in sexual coercion, the transgender child whose transition tore apart not only the family, but a cherished religious community. We've all had to take careful, sometimes very difficult inventory to determine how those years and those experiences led to where we are now, and that for better or worse, and it takes time and tinkering and perspective to find that better, we wouldn't be who we are without having had those years and learned those lessons in our particular underworlds. That is, after darkness, because of darkness, we determine how to start again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because, you know, when I got this originally, and then I ordered the CDs because I love to drive in the car and hear her read her own story, and now it's on Audible.
Yes,
I mean, the one we pay to have whatever we want for as long as we want.
Lots of people.
So the story is coming out. So what I'm choosing to do here is to flip back to page 81 of an 89-page, 10-year struggle to reclaim my life again. So I'm just going to go down to basically the last part of it, because this is titled, All Because of My Precious Granddaughter. Why did I undertake the passion to write about big, bad pharma and how it continues to capitalize on the blunting of billions of brains,
your alliteration there.
Which begins to get corny, but never, she's my writing teacher, really. You can blame it on my now almost 6-year-old, almost 7-year-old granddaughter who is growing up in a culture with the belief that there is a pill for just about anything that troubles you. A culture of addicts, former addicts, damaged people doing damaging things. But before this precious little girl entered my life, making me a grandma for the first and only time, I didn't have to worry about the next generation being handed an ailing society and planet. I will be thrilled if repairing the benzo blunder, a mosaic of recovery with my father's watercolor on the cover, hits a nerve somewhere in a system that has been so ravaged by ignorance and then greed that causes one CEO of one of the companies that manufacture psychoactive drugs to consider helping patients shift from benzodiazepines, or Scientology, to alternative plant-based calming protocols and behavioral therapies. That this little book educates about the benefits of close attention to restorative nutrition and disciplined daily exercise. That helps even one person ask the questions to be able to ask the questions about benzodiazepines that I did not know to ask until that little inky thing said something's wrong here. But even more important, I want to affirm that my granddaughter and her generation will not be victimized by pharma experimentation and exploitation. And instead, they grow in making informed choices in a benzodiazepine blunder-free world. And that's, to me, the legacy of what we also share is the dedication of this work, because I've become this Judaic scholar, that this book is dedicated to one of Judaism's most powerful and specific contribution to humanity, which is its ethics of responsibility, illustrated by social concepts of gratitude, philanthropy, kindness, and most important, a mandate to repair the world. It is known as Tikkun Olam. And so to me, what you've done by bringing out knowledge as well as concepts, it goes along with you being a fine literary writer. And so you're not looking to make the splash that is being made by those who worry about John Travolta.
Or have terrible and extraordinary tales to tell of their escapes. I mean, they're really incredible books, but it just wasn't my story.
It is, but it doesn't discount the fact that just like what's going on in any part of our society that has been corrupted by whatever it is, in this case a man who was a science fiction writer, who has churches and temples all over the world, and people are getting in real trouble.
And spending lots of money and raising their children in it. But I also want to say at this very moment, that dedication moves me so deeply, because it is so much exactly who you are.
Oh, sweet.
That is what you do. That is what you do with every day. Having just spent several days with you, realize every action you take, everything that you do, what you are up to in your life is about those four elements that you just explained in your dedication.
Well,
I'm deeply moved by that.
I am a very privileged white American woman whose husband was smart enough to be able to leave me with enough to carry out the things that he used to laugh at when I would tell him about my ideas. You know, so being able to have the gift to be able to have this kind of an afternoon, yesterday, the day before, and to send you on your way for a long trip and all the things you have to do before you go back to Franklin Marshall College in Pennsylvania. And then, because things are changing in all of our lives, we now know that as you are going to be pretty much retiring into your own creative life,
correct,
that you and I will continue to work together.
As we clearly have for not just decades, but eons.
Probably. Probably.